Hello and welcome to an overview of Bstar's new benchmarking service, and today we're going to be going through an example for the financial services industry. There are 4 components to the benchmarking service and I'll briefly touch on each of those now. The first one's a group of tailored benchmark reports. To collate this data, we have 2 surveys that we require financial planners to complete. Survey Part A, which covers off a range of qualitative measures, and Part B, which looks at the financial performance of a practice. The idea being, of course, that we can then compare the results of individual practices against one another, but also as a collective group. So let's have a look at the outputs that we're able to produce from collecting information in surveys Part A and B. The first one I'm going to show you is the industry report. So this industry report is a collation of all the participating firms we did in this particular project, of which you can see there were 12. So we break the information into a number of categories. The first one is around trading. So you can see all the various measures that we've put together there, and the industry average column is the average of the 12 participating firms, and on the right the industry benchmark is the top 20% of those participating firms. Likewise, we collect information on growth and performance, and the idea being that you're able to see in terms of what is the benchmarking firms doing in terms of performance ratios compared to the average performed firms. So now let's have a look at the individual participating firms and how they stack up against their peers and colleagues. So here's the industry performance benchmark improvement report, and what it's highlighting are the 3 major weaknesses that this particular firm has and the 3 major strengths. And so we give it a ranking, we highlight the variance and the risk associated with that variance. We also then map all their weaknesses against their peers, likewise their strengths, and then we produce a table which highlights how those industry performance benchmarks look. So green is obviously things are travelling okay, the yellow sector indicates it needs some attention, and the red needs urgent attention. And you can see below that there are the KPI summaries. So once we've collated this data, one of the things that we produce for you is a key findings report. So let's have a quick look at that. The first slide here illustrates the number of consultations that the directors are undertaking with both existing clients and also prospects. So you can see the variances are quite significant there. Active client ratio for directors. What are their prospect conversion rates? What are their respective client growth rates? What's the EBIT of the best performing business versus the average business? What's the split of fee for service revenue as a percentage of total revenue? What's the profitability per client? What's the profitability per director? What proportion of fees are trails in as overall revenue? What proportion are upfront? What's the revenue per director? The second component is the business valuation assessment, and so what we do here is that we produce a valuation report which highlights your cap rate, your profitability as measured by weighted EBIT, and therefore what we believe to be a true and impartial commercial value. The third component is the industry reports. So we break these into 2 sections. We have our standard business valuation reports. I'll just bring up a quick sample here with a fee range of 300 to 750k. And what we can see here is that for a business turning over between 300 and 750k, that the average profit as measured by the 34 practices in this category is about 132,000 as opposed to the benchmark as measured by the top 20 is 233,000. So the summary of that is a benchmark firm in that category, being $300,000 to $750,000 turnover, is generating $100,000 more in profit. So let's now have a look at the industry performance report, and I've run these reports using the same revenue ranges as I did for the valuation reports. So I'm going to bring up for you now the 18 key performance indicators that we track for a firm turning over between 300 and 750k. So the first thing I want to highlight here is that for this particular group of firms, we can see in the salary, wages and on costs, an average firm is spending 55% of their turnover on salary, wages and on costs, whereas a benchmark firm is only spending 39%. Why is that important? Well, because we believe if we could implement a program that would bring that spend down to a benchmark, then that money can go straight to the bottom line, and in a moment we'll have a look at that. So let's see how that plays out. I've got a couple of reports here around profit improvement and the difference to a business in terms of profitability and also business value that can be achieved by moving from an average performer to a benchmark performer. So the one I'm going to look at here is around the profit, and as the example just showed there, with groups that are turning over between 300k and 750k, the average spend on salary, wages, on cost was 39% of turnover, as opposed to the benchmark firms, which were 24%. So now let's look at a specific example of those 18 KPIs that we track and do the numbers. So I've got an example of a business here that's turning over 650k. It was an average performed business, so it was spending around about 40% of its total revenue was being spent on salary and wages on costs. However, we got them to a benchmark position, the bottom line would benefit by $100,750. And how that's achieved is that we would get their spend from 39.5% down to 24%. So at this point, I'll summarise the Bstar benchmarking offer that we've gone through in today's video. There are 4 key components. The first one is around collecting information both of a qualitative and a qualitative nature. We then are able to produce a summary industry benchmark report of the sample set of participant firms. Each firm gets its own benchmark report as well as a key findings analysis. From there, we're able to then do an individual business value assessment on each of the individual practices. We then have our standard business valuation and standard industry performance benchmark reports that I've shown some examples of there. And then the final component is that we'll do an analysis of those benchmark reports and work with you to address the issues that the benchmarking process has uncovered. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.